Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I am Christine Marks, and today I still have blue Himalayan poppies on my brain. I went to a local Longwood Gardens, a local botanical garden a few weeks ago, and took a lot of reference shots. But today we're gonna paint it with big. We're gonna do it big, or I'm going to do it large. This is 12 by 16, and I'm gonna do it with the background and everything, just because I would like to have like the hint of the Himalayas behind it. And so this should be a fun video. I hope you stay tuned. I've got my 48-piece A Gallo set that's new that I'm working with, that has some really beautiful blues in it. So I've been able to play with this for about a month, and the blues are really exciting to me in this set. So I hope you stick around and paint with me. Welcome, and let's get painting. All right, so I have taped down my Arches paper. I have an assortment of 10, mostly 10 size round brushes. Some are very soft, some are more springy. And we're going to start with wetting the entire page. And as you can see, I didn't get the middle as well as I should have. And that'll show up when I start painting. So make sure you wet the whole thing as thoroughly as you can, because we're going to drop in some very pale blue in the background. I'm going to work back to front. And I love to put little fluffy cumulus clouds in the background. So I start with a pale blue, and I'm not going to go through the colors, because as you watch me do this, pick a pale blue that you like and then take a darker blue and put it up along the top. It just helps. I can tell you the colors that I'm using, and if you're using my exact same palette, that works. But if you're working with different colors or different manufacturers, then it's a little bit easier for me to say light blue, dark blue, and you use a light blue and a dark blue, knowing that it's not going to look exactly the same. Now I'm lightly putting in with a dark, almost a Prussian blue, the darkest blue, the suggestion of the mountain. And then I'm going to come in with a light green for the, not really mountain, it's kind of a mountain in front of it, but the green field that is coming down at the base of the mountain. And then come in from the bottom and put this light green along the front of the painting. And now adding more green and more green. This is all wet into wet, and so make sure you've got a lot of pigment and a lot of water on the brush. And I'm coming in with a yellowy green on the right side. What I make every effort to do is to do 2 or 3 shades of green in the front, adding more blue or more yellow so that there's a variety of your greens. And I'm going darker and a little more intense towards the front for this first passage, and it's still very wet. And now I'm dropping in more pigment in random patterns, and really try to turn your brush different directions and put in random drops of more pigment. It just really helps the finished painting look a lot better. And now, while it's still very wet, we're going to drop in blue, light blue. I'm starting with a very light blue and dropping in, trying to be a little bit bigger in the front and a little bit smaller in the back. But again, here you want to be random. You want to have random drops of blue. I started with a light blue. I'm going to go in with a darker blue to just vary the color. And this is still wet. And so it'll spread and it'll become much lighter. Even though I'm using more pigment with these flowers, watercolor tends to dry about 2 shades lighter. So it's just a very different, funny medium. So I'm going to keep dropping in. Now I'm paying attention to doing smaller drops in the back so that there's some perspective built in. Your bigger flowers are closer to your center of vision, so they're closer to the front and they're bigger, and the ones in the back, they should get a little bit smaller and smaller, just to kind of show your eye that this is going backwards in the distance. So now I'm coming in, because the sky dried so light, with darker blue, the same blue, more pigment, less water, and dropping that in along the top, dabbing it with a paper towel to kind of keep those edges soft on the clouds. And then I'm going to try something a little different here. I'm going to try starting with the centers on these poppies, and I get very frustrated because in a moment it's going to flash to 3 finished poppies. My iPhone shut off, so my attempt was to start in the middle because the yellows get lost with the blues. So I start with this first leaf of this poppy, and then bam, there's 3 of my poppies. So to make up for that, I am going to do 3 more poppies, or 2 more poppies from start to finish, so you can see what I did here. Very frustrating, and I apologize for this, but I'm happy with the finished product, so I'm going to continue with the video. I'm taking the blue and I'm dropping in a little bit more pigment and a little bit more shape to these flowers in the front. And now I'm going to do poppies from start to finish, because you didn't get to see my fluffy blue Himalayan poppies. So you start with your brush and a watery wash of blue, and just really give the petals some fluff as you're going around and making a poppy shape. So we're going to go around with the blue, and I tried to aim this one in the other direction and fluff in 4 petals. Now I like them touching because there are not usually a lot of splits between these poppies, they overlap. And then I went in with more pigment of the turquoise blue and dotted it around the middle, and then other areas of the poppy where you want some shade. And you want it to make it kind of random. And I go around the edges a little bit to give it a little bit of, you want it to look like there is light and shadow within each of these petals. And now I'm going to do another one. And again, I apologize about the 3 poppies blipping out. So we're going to fluff it around. The area in the center I'm using where the yellow is going to be, that dark area. I said I'm going to start off of this center here and bring 4 of these big fluffy petals into the middle here. And I think I'm going to add a 5th one here and then kind of mush them together. Poppies are very forgiving, believe it or not. You're just going for a central point in the middle and doing these fluffy, beautiful petals around it. And then adding in more pigment in the middle, and then I'm going along where I want shadowy areas with my brush and more pigment. And then you want to come in with an even deeper blue. There's my dark, it's like indanthrone blue, while it's wet, and let those colors all meld together. So there is the second poppy from scratch. These are all drying. I'm checking to see how dry they are because I don't want a bunch of blooms in here. We're going to start now on some of these, maybe throw some little closed poppies, 2 closed poppies to fill in some of these spots. And because I love closed poppies and the way the stem is a little hook and topples over with these beautiful closed poppies. So now I want to make sure it's the other one's not directly across from that. So I'm making sure it is higher and not right exactly, you could draw a straight line across the horizon to the next closed poppy. I make that mistake all the time, which is why I have to pay particular attention to not doing it. And now we're coming in and giving a little bit of shape to these forward poppies, adding yet another shade of blue and just doing some loose petals all around the front. And then dropping in some darker blue. Boop, 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 boop in the middles of all of these. And now take a look at your whole painting. And I'm not liking the big amount of white space that was left around trying to start with the yellow in the middle. I don't know if I'm happy with that or not happy with that, but I'm going to fill in with a darker blue towards the center and try to maintain some of that yellow. It's almost like negative painting. So I'm really trying not to hit those beautiful yellow spots in the middle of there, and trying to drag that out into the poppy a little bit. I'm not unhappy with the way it ended up. I actually kind of like it. So just a different kind of approach when I was doing that poppy, to do the yellow first and not put it in at the end. But I didn't want to come over it with like gouache. I wanted to just use purely watercolor with this. So that's looking okay. Now I'm taking a look at everything. I am not happy with the clouds and the way that my second coat of water is drying. So I'm going to clean my brush and kind of scrub at the lines of that these hard lines in the clouds. I'm just going to scrub them out and pat them with my paper towel and hope to kind of minimize those, because I like the colors that are going on around the clouds, and I don't want to go over it with like white gouache or, I don't know, Dr. Martin's. I kind of want to leave those clouds the way they are and just get rid of that line. So if you have that same problem, go ahead and scrub it out and pat it with a paper towel. That is a little helpful, and I actually like the lighter blue that it gives me around those clouds. Sometimes you get happy accidents when you're painting. Frequently that happens actually with me. So now I want to bring out these clouds a little bit more, drop a little bit more blue in. I don't want to mess with it too much. I find when I mess with something a lot, I ruin it, and that's no fun. So I'm going to hold myself back from messing with these anymore. A little bit there and stop. Now we're going to go back into the painting, and I can't help myself, back at the clouds. And let's take a look at what's going on down here and put some stems in. I start out, poppy stems are very thin and they're hairy. They have little hairs coming off of them. And so I want to get in the stems on all my big flowers first. And I am doing it starting with the light yellow, but then I'm going to go back in with a little bit darker green and kind of mix up the greens that I'm pulling from in my palette. And this one, you just want to have these stems kind of here and there looking like they're blowing in the wind. So this one spot down here that is just pure white, it looks very washed out. I am choosing to add some bigger flowers in there. And I'm happy with the finish. Then put a little dark dot of blue right in there as well. Because I don't want to go over that with a whole wash of anything. Now I'm coming in with a darker green along my stem, and I'm going to give it these little hairy things that come off at the end. I'm not going for full-on realism, but I'm going for it being a little bit realistic. So I'm going to put these little hairs in that come off of this stem, and even toy around with some of the leaves. They have funny looking leaves. Go in and put a few little hairs on here. Now I don't want the hairs to be the focal point. So I'm really trying to make these very light. And now I didn't have a reference photo of a leaf, and I wanted to add some leaves in there just for a little bit of greenery towards the front. And so I'm, to the best of my recollection, adding these funny little skinny leaves that poppies have. And a little more green, and I always drop in a little bit of a second color to kind of run and make it interesting, to go with what I feel is watercolor's biggest attribute, and that is the blending of these beautiful colors. So another little leaf here, and we're gonna drop in a little bit of darker green, another little leaf. You can put in as many or as few as you want. And now we're going to add the little stems to the flowers that are close enough for you to see that there are flowers, is a good idea. Now it's looking really too pale towards the front, and I don't want to ruin the whole thing. So I'm going in, now that it's dry, with a second wash of a bluer green. And I'm wetting the area, bringing it forward that I want darker, taking care to go around the poppies and getting it nice and wet, and then dropping in darker color and also dry brushing some of this green around the front. I chose to do that because I want some of the lighter color showing through. So I'm going back and forth between where I wet it in the middle and added darker green, and then dry brushing in some little spots. And now, because it felt also way too pale in the middle, I wanted to add kind of like a mountain range that's closer, or a hill that's closer, that's covered with trees. And it also kind of brings your eye back from where it disappears, back where the big mountain is in the background, the mountain range. So I'm working carefully around these poppies and adding a dark green tree line, and then a light yellow where the meadow begins. Again, kind of carefully working around what I have on there, and then bringing it forward, and then putting in a few more trees there. I really didn't like the way it kind of phased out or disappeared there in the middle. So adding a line of trees coming down to the meadow seemed to be a good solution. Now we're going to come in with the dark blue, the last wave of detail for these poppies. And I go specifically around the middle. You're going to try to go in the direction that the petals are curving. So if the petal's curving to the left, you can see you want to go in the direction of the petals, or else it's going to look odd. And I'm also adding in at this time areas of a little more shadow area, not necessarily shade, but shadow area, where with poppies, there are lighter and darker, where with the folds and the turns of the poppies, you're going to have different amounts of light shining through. So I'm going through and deepening the centers almost always, and then emphasizing some areas where the light is not hitting to give them a little more interest. And I'm also going over my little closed poppies with some lines of shadow, and then going along and just adding. Don't go overboard here adding these little lines. Keep them thin, and keep them, don't go crazy. It's kind of like when you're splattering at the end, which is what we're going to do in just a second. We're going to take a piece of paper and make it so it doesn't get on the mountains, and splatter some beautiful turquoise in here. Mix up a nice wet pile of paint, And that is it for this painting. I'm so glad you stayed with me. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy painting to everyone.